Hi, good morning everyone. It's with great pleasure that I welcome those who have made it in person here to the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan Art Museum and those who are joining us online today. We are extremely excited to be partnering or working towards a partnership with the ArtBank of South Africa. And I'm not going to say too much more, but just to say that we are incredibly excited, Untitled Chapter, the Chief Curator of the Red Location Gallery, and myself, Emma O'Brien, Head of the Nelson Mandela Metropolitan Art Museum, to be working towards a partnership with the ArtBank. But here today, they are here as to promote their wonderful project, which is designed specifically so that the government can celebrate you, our artists, and that we have a legacy project to keep celebrating our artists going forward. So the other thing that is very exciting about today is it's International Museums Day. So I don't know how many people know what International Museums Day is, but this year it really seems to be getting a lot of traction. So every year on the 18th of May, museums around the world celebrate what museums do. And each year there's a special theme, and the theme for this year is Power of Museums. So Power of the Museums for Utando and myself in this project is that we are the custodians of the story of art in Port Elizabeth, or Nelson Mandela Bay. And the story of art in Nelson Mandela Bay has a past, a future, and a present. And the present is who is listening to me now and sitting in this room. And that is very important for us to know that we capture that, so that going forward, when we have generations looking back at the collection, that we're able to reflect all of the different voices over a long period of time of all the art and your voices and what you have contributed and your thoughts and your ideas and your incredible creative spirit is captured somewhere. And this is the home for it. Between myself and Nelson Mandela Art Museum and Red Location Gallery. We are very excited that we can be that home. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Untitled Chapter from the Red Location Gallery, who will introduce the ArtBank and the project and the speaker. Thank you for today.
Thank you, Emma. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for coming this morning. We're very excited, as Emma was saying, to be beginning this partnership with the ArtBank, and to be hosting them to explain and brief artists on the work that they're doing, and as well as the submission process that Nonto will be telling us about. I think it's important to just say a few words around this theme that Emma is talking about, especially in the context of International Museums Day. I think the theme makes us want us to reflect upon the power of museums and the institutions to transform. And the focus of this year's theme is also trying to reflect upon the role of digitization, how the role of technology has shaped and changed the very nature of museums. We're now experiencing museums in very high-tech, in some museums, interactive exhibitions. So how have these also transformed museums? And I think this has led to, of course, a lot of innovation around how stories are told, histories are told, and futures are imagined. I think also this theme of this year, e-commerce also wants to look at how we sustain museum in sort of a post-pandemic society, in a post-digital world. How can museums be sustainable? Because obviously now we have to think through what museums collect, or what kind of education and public programs that museums offer. And more importantly, in the context of the conversations that we are having, I think the theme wants to also reflect on how do we decolonize these museums to make museums more accessible, more democratic in not only in its collection practice, but in the ways in which they operate. I think the view is, of course, to see how museum can play an important and transformative role in ensuring communities are developed and built through these education and public programs. So the question becomes then, what does this all mean in our context? Especially because we see museums and collections under siege, whether it means that there's a lack of funding, lack of support from government. We work in a government context, but when we have to fight for budgets, museums are always the last on the list, where our society is facing hectic challenges, especially in the context of the post-pandemic. Budgets are under pressure to look at issues of water, electricity, and museums then, sort of are bottom of the pile. So how do we then think about museums and the role they should play within our context, especially also when you look at a lot of post-apartheid museums and heritage resources and institutions have been under attack, and often some of them have been closed. I mean, I of course work for the relocation cultural precinct, and the actual physical buildings have been closed for now approaching 10 years. And if we can let that happen, what does it mean then for ordinary citizens in terms of how they engage with museums as well? So this has forced us as a nation, to think, to rethink what museums are and what a museum should be doing, because obviously the actual physical buildings have been closed. And we came up with a program called Precinct Without Walls, because we firmly believe that despite, even if we were in the actual buildings, we would not be, the work of the museums or the cultural precinct, which is of course made out of the museum, the art gallery, and the digital library and archive. We wouldn't be just, the work would not be confined to the buildings, but rather we also, would have to be out there in the community. So this has really forced us to think through how about our work that are not attached to buildings. So we've actually been operating in a virtual way even pre-pandemic. So for us, it enabled us to be more agile in our responses to the challenges that were posed by the pandemic. But I think in thinking through the Precinct Without Walls program, our view or our approach has really been informed by the mandate in which that legislation forces us or compels us as arts and culture workers within government to do, informed of course by the white paper, which says that we really have to focus on three levels really. The level of participation, so how do we ensure that ordinary people who are not necessarily artists can participate and enjoy and consume these institutions, museums, and arts and culture programs. So the other level is of course the level of development. How do we ensure that we create and promote programs that will ensure that we not only develop artists per se, but we also develop our society as a whole. So how do we integrate arts and culture into the curriculum, for instance, and how do we ensure that as we are consuming arts and culture that we develop our citizens more broadly. And then the third level is of course at the level of excellence. How do we ensure that as government we support artists who have a lot of skill to not only have a robust local creative economy, but that speaks to national and international imperatives as well. So how do we support our bright shining stars to ensure that they can reach the next level? So it is then very critical that we as our institutions here in Nelson Mandela Bay, the Art Museum and the Art Gallery, that we pursue partnerships with the ArtBank and institutions like the ArtBank, because the ArtBank is really focused on trying to develop a South African contemporary art collection that is reflective of the artists that live and work not only in the Eastern Cape but across the country. And I think projects like this are critical because, as Emma was saying, that they speak to the kind of past that we want to preserve, the present that we want to engage, and the future that we want to imagine. Because the legacy of the collections that we collect now is critical for future generations. So, it becomes even more important when we look at the work that we've been trying to do locally in terms of pushing the development of a city collection. We're very excited that now we are now second year where we've issued the call and people have submitted, and we're currently we are adjudicating now the submissions that have come in. So partnerships like with the ArtBank are very much welcome within that context, and we hope and know that through our continued engagement, that we will be able not only to deliver on the mandates that we are wanting, but also to now really operate at the level of excellence where the best of the best are getting into the major collections, and I mean, because the projects like ArtBank are critical, because if you look at, it becomes very difficult for artists that are outside the gallery system to access, public collections and be able to get into this collection. So outside of the sort of IZICO, South African National Gallery, ArtBank becomes then a critical component within the landscape of collecting South African contemporary art. So, and I know Nonto is very modest, and she wouldn't want me to, do a long introduction, but she has, worked and in the sector for a number of years, doing a number of projects, and she's completely well qualified to lead the efforts of the ArtBank, and we are very excited to welcome you to the city of Gqeberha. So let's give you a warm welcome.
Thank you, Utando, and thank you, Emma, for welcoming the ArtBank into your spaces and giving us the opportunity to engage artists today on International Museums Day. As Utando has said, my name is Nonto Cheryl Msomi, and I'm the project manager of the ArtBank of South Africa. But I'm not here by myself. I'm also here with Mr. Songezile Matigita, who is on our acquisitions committee and is based in the Eastern Cape. So thank you very much for welcoming us. Okay, so where I'll start is the history of the ArtBank. So the ArtBank is a national program by the Department of Arts and Culture, but it's hosted by the National Museum in Bloemfontein. The idea of the ArtBank model started in 1996 in the white paper on arts, culture, and heritage, but it took quite a few years for the project to actually be launched. In fact, the project was shelved for a while, and interest was renewed in the 2000s with trips to Canada to look at the Canadian ArtBank model. So then the department was interested in establishing the ArtBank in South Africa with the intention of it stimulating the art market and assisting artists. The ArtBank was then officially launched in 2017. That was just before my time, before I joined the ArtBank. And the official launch was in Olivenace. It was launched by the Minister Natim Tetwa. At the time, it was called the National ArtBank, but then we subsequently changed the name to the ArtBank of South Africa, just because we thought it sounded nicer. Right, so the vision of the ArtBank is to promote, foster, and stimulate a vibrant market for the collection of South African contemporary visual art. So that vision will tell you exactly at what we are looking at. We are looking at contemporary South African art. And the program was actually instituted to respond to various issues that were coming from the sector, mainly looking to promote and support and create or supplement the income for artists, to create a art market, or to help create an art market for artists to be able to bring their works into. And also, interestingly enough, it was also to meet the art needs of the government. If you would imagine how many government offices there are, and the opportunities there are for artists to be showcasing their works in those spaces, that was one of the reasons that the program was really backed by government into being established. So we have 4 mission statements that we work on as the program. So the first one is curating a definitive collection of contemporary visual art, which is why we look at all kinds of works from different parts of South Africa with different kinds of themes, because we want to create that definitive collection that represents contemporary South African art, but also to promote the financial sustainability of the artists and the program through the leasing of the arts that we do collect. So the ArtBank's main purpose is to acquire work from artists with the intention to lease those works to public spaces, government offices, or private individuals. Then the third mission statement is to nurture emerging South African artists by expanding the market for their work and providing skills development opportunities. So the main way we nurture artists is we buy directly from artists. Majority of the collection is bought directly from artists, but we do also buy a portion of the collection from galleries and artist representatives. And then we also look at programs that could assist artists in developing the skills, which I will talk about one of the programs that we ran in 2020. And then the last mission statement is fostering an appreciation for contemporary art by making art accessible to the broader public in their workplaces and shared spaces. So this is mainly where we focus on how to get the art seen by the public, and that's through the exhibitions that we do, through the leasing, through other programs that we are always open to. Okay, right. So the ArtBank, we focus on emerging contemporary local artists. We do have some established artists in the collection, but they're quite a small percentage of the collection. The main focus is the emerging artists. And we purchase the works for the ArtBank collection. And there's potential that the works could be sold at some point. This is the one unique aspect of the South African ArtBank versus the Australian ArtBank or the Canadian ArtBank, is that the South African ArtBank has a temporary collection which could be sold off if the interested parties are interested in acquiring that work. And the main idea with the ArtBank that the government is really interested in about is that it becomes a self-sustaining program. As many of you would know that public funds tend to shrink, especially when it comes to support for the visual arts. So the idea is that we work on a model that can be self-sustaining so that it can continue to support artists in future, and it continues to exist as well. So the idea is that the works we acquire, we lease them out, the income we receive from the leasing goes back into buying more works, and it becomes a cycle in that way. Right, so then I wanted to share this slide just to give you an idea as to how the flow would work. So then the idea, on the one end, they are the artists who create the works, But then we also, as I mentioned, we also acquire from galleries, we acquire from agents, we also look at tertiaries, because the ArtBank opportunities are open to all artists. And then we create our collection. So our collection has various mediums. So we have paintings, drawings, prints, new media, all in the collection, and we manage that collection. And then on the other end is the potential clients that would lease or buy the works from the ArtBank. So this just gives you an idea as to how the model of the ArtBank works, and we try to keep it as simple as possible, so that it's easier to make sure that it continues and thrives. Okay. So the program is actually broken up into 3 phases. We are leaving the first phase, going into the second phase. The first phase was generally about establishing the institution. There was a lot of concern around this phase because we need to build an entity that can work, that can function properly and not fizzle out. So that's what we've been able to do. So we've put in the systems in place, and we have a program that's working really well. So now the focus is on driving the demand for the works that are in the collection. And then the long-term goal is obviously for it to be self-sustaining and becoming a leader in the art sector as we know it. Right, so I've spoken to some of this already, which is why we've been focusing on the organizational, operational efficiency. So while we were creating the collection, we picked up that there were certain blind spots in the collection. Namely, there were underrepresented provinces compared to others. So, which is why we started the program of roadshows, going to each province, engaging the artists so that all artists are aware of the opportunities and also have the opportunity to ask questions and to clear up any confusion that there might be. We've had launch exhibitions as well in the various provinces. We've done in KZN, Limpopo, Northern Cape, and Northwest. And hopefully we will be doing one here in the Eastern Cape. And then the ones that will remain will be the Western Cape and Gauteng. Okay, so this is just a representation of, the exhibitions that we do. During COVID, we also started online platforms with 360 virtual tour exhibitions, and those are available and could be seen on our website. Other opportunities, so besides artists being showcased in the exhibitions that we host around the country, we also produce catalogs, and we have a writer and researcher on the team. We're actually recruiting for a new one, who writes about the artist and provides academic support to the collection that we are building. And then we have the official website, which is www.ArtBankSA.org. And you can visit the website to look at the full collection. As we acquire, we update the website. And then also for other news and opportunities, you can visit the website and the articles that we produce on the collection and the artists that we have in the collection. So the ArtBank is a team that is in Bloemfontein, but we mainly focus on the administration and the logistics and make sure that the program works efficiently and effectively. We then have an acquisitions committee, which is independent of us, and we heavily depend on this committee to guide us as to when it comes to the selection of the works. So, and it also gives a level of independence and checks and balances in the system for us, in that the committee is the group that actually recommends the works that should be acquired by the ArtBank. So when you deal with us, the ArtBank team, we will generally be dealing with the administrative part of the submissions. And then we take that to the acquisitions committee, which then deliberates on the various selection criteria that they have for acquiring the work. So the committee is made up of these members. We have a DSAC representative, Mr. Andries Oberholzer. And then because the ArtBank is within the National Museum, we also have a council member representative, Moira. And then we have in Limpopo, curator of the Polokwane Art Museum, Amos Letwalo. And then in Northwest, we have curator of the university, Northwest University Art Gallery, Amogelang. And then we have independent researcher, curator, academic, and currently she's the curatorial director at Jevet Art Center, Gabin Gobo. We have Prof. Kim Berman, director of Artist Proof Studio and lecturer at UJ. And then we have Mr. Songezile Matihita, artist, arts manager, academic, and until recently lecturer at Rhodes University. And then we have Sumaya Menezes, who is the gallery director at the KZNSA and arts administrator and curator. So this committee is the committee that advises us as to which works we should be looking at or acquiring, and they're really, really helpful in helping us build this really wonderful collection that we have. So this is just to give you an idea. So unlike maybe other art competitions where maybe 5 people's work will get acquired or receive interest, we actually buy quite a number of works per year. So you'll see in 2018 we bought 127, and last year we bought over 200 works. So each year may vary, but we generally buy quite a substantial number of works, which then means a lot more opportunities for a lot more artists to have support from the program. Okay, so then we have the selection criteria that the committee generally looks at. So they consider emerging artists, look at the artwork themes, and it's very interesting. There's been some dialogue online recently about the themes that the ArtBank acquires. The ArtBank does not set any theme for artists. What we're interested in, and it's very important for us, is that artists are able to express themselves, to express what they see, what they experience in their environment. So we don't theme any year. So all themes are welcome and will be considered by the committee. But they also look at the pricing of the work. That's very important for the committee. As you know, the ArtBank is a public program, so we have to spend the funds responsibly. So they do consider the value of the work in relation to the artist's career. They do go into great consideration with that. Then they look at provincial or underrepresented groups. As I mentioned, we pick up the blind spots in the collection, and sometimes there's a concerted effort to cover those blind spots by giving particular attention to those underrepresented groups. They look at the artist's trajectory. So some of that is also considered as to, you know, is the artist working in a sustainable way? Where is this artist likely to get in their career? So that's some of the consideration. A huge consideration is given to technical accomplishment. So if you can imagine that the ArtBank's intention is to lease these artworks, and the works could be ending up in public spaces, on people's homes, so they have to move a lot. So the idea is that the artworks need to be able to withstand that kind of movement, being, over a few years. So ephemeral work might not work for us. So you need to be aware about the materials that you use, the techniques that you use. Make sure it can last generally. And then we look at diversifying the mediums. So that's why we have a quite eclectic collection. And we look at the artist's consistency. So the idea is that artists can submit up to 5 works. Don't submit 5 works just because you have 5 works. Just submit your best work. Because then it gives the committee an idea as to the level of your work. And then there isn't a work that brings down the other work. Just submit your best work. Even if it's just 1 work, just submit 1 work. Okay. And then the next few slides are just examples of some of the works we have in the collection. I'm not sure, hopefully it's visible there. But these are just some of the examples of the photography that we have in the collection. So you see, it's not just portraiture or landscape. It's quite a diverse spread of works. And then this is an example of some of the paintings we have. So you'll also see it's different styles. Some of the works are highly realistic. Some of it's more surreal. Once again, diverse themes there. And this is some of the 3D work that we have. So you see we have ceramics, sculpture, bronze works in there. And then these couple of sides are about the left side is digital work, and then the right side is example of some prints that we have. And then these works are mixed media drawings, and then mixed media with collage and paintings. So it gives you an idea as to how diverse the collection is. So there really isn't a limit for what artists can be submitting. It's just we are not ready, or we're not quite equipped to deal with video work as yet. So as long as the work is still, it generally can go on a wall or on a plinth, or freestanding, that's generally what we are looking at. Okay, so the submission guidelines for the 2020 funding window. So we generally say the program is for South African artists. But as you can see from the slide, what South African artist means can vary. So it could be somebody who's born in South Africa, a South African citizen in South Africa as an approved temporary resident for a minimum of 2 years, or a permanent resident of South Africa. And then, or also it could be an artist maybe living in South Africa or overseas, or as long as at least one of the above stated criteria are demonstrated. And then if it's a collective, no less than 50% of the contributors must meet the criteria. Okay, so I've mentioned the first part, which is the work needs to be technically sound, resistant to deterioration, and is easy to handle when being installed, packed, and transported. So basically it must be ready work. Artwork can be submitted in any medium. If it's 3-dimensional work, we recommend that you send us multiple images of the works. And then maximum 5 works should be submitted. So the application form actually makes it clear that you can only submit 5 works. And then we're looking at works that has been created after October 2021, because that's when the previous funding window would have closed. And then the other thing is, you don't have to worry about framing your work or worrying about those costs. The idea is that we get artwork that is ready, and if it needs framing or mounting, we will be able to sort that out on our end. Okay? So we're not looking for reproductions or duplicates of work. It needs to be original work, unless it's an addition, because then that's different rules. And then importantly, the sale price of the artwork, whether it includes VAT or not, needs to be very clearly stated in the application form. And then the new guideline that we added, that the committee added last year, is that the artwork must not exceed 60,000 Rand. So that for the first time, we've put a cap on the value of the work that we can acquire. This is to allow more artists to benefit from the program. Okay, and then we require that all artists that submit needs to be registered on the central supply database system. This you find it by going www.csd.gov, I believe, and you're able to submit to register there either as an individual or as a company, and artists have been able to do that quite successfully over the years. And then we also require, if we buy your work, we also require certain permissions to use the images, as you can see, to promote your work, to put it on the website, to put it on the catalog. So we would be sending you a form just purely for that. But obviously the artists always keep the copyright of the images. And no physical artworks are to be sent to us. So everything is electronic. So there's an application form you can download from the website. Or if you email info@artbanksa.org, we can send you the application form. So the idea is that we just get the form with good images. You do not send us any work. We don't have space for it. Okay, so how to submit is you complete an application form. Make sure you send it by Friday, 24 June 2022. And you email it to info@artbanksa.org. and artbank2@nasmas.co.za. These are two different people who are handling. You just make sure that none of your applications fall through the cracks. Yeah, and then that's that.
Okay, we'll take some questions.
Yeah. There's a second part to it, but I'd like to just deal with the submission questions. Okay. Submissions, yeah.
So let's take some questions, and then Nonto can answer them for us. Do we have any hands? Or are you still marinating on the presentation?
Maybe then while they're still thinking, I can give space for Songezile to maybe speak on behalf of the committee, maybe thoughts that I might have missed.
Okay, you've missed your opportunity now. We're going to let him speak, and then we're going to take questions after. Is that okay? All right, cool.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As Nonto has said, my name is Songezile Matikita, and was born and now based in the Eastern Cape. What I would like to speak to is about the criteria that the committee uses in the selection of the collection of the ArtBank, and to answer any questions relating to the criteria and the processes of like that we use as a committee in selecting the artworks. But first, I'd like to make a disclaimer here that there is no perfect or any possible perfect way in which a selection process of artworks can be done. So we select under enormous awareness that what we are doing is based on our personal ability and our professional ability and awareness that art is not something that you can select based on a mark or something like that. So we are informed by our profession, but by also our access and in access to what South African art is about. So that's the disclaimer. But what we have come up with as a committee from the conception of the ArtBank is flexibility, so that we are able to move with the times, but we are also able to account for the selection process, but also for the reasons or the rationale on why we selected particular artworks in that year. So you can stop me at any point in time and ask questions. For an example, the criteria about subject matter, Nonto alluded to the fact that the ArtBank doesn't impose any subject matter for artists. But as a committee, we are also aware that the ArtBank works for the government. So we tend to look at artworks that are either not pro or anti the establishment. So we interrogate the kind of subject matter that is presented to us, and we debate about whether the artwork would be presentable in office spaces, because the ArtBank leases these artworks to office spaces, to individuals, to NGOs. So we deliberate on subject matter so that we are equally satisfied that the artwork is suitable for our clients, as much as we do not impose the subject matter, but we still have to acquire artworks that works up in line with the vision and mission of the ArtBank.
You don't have like politicians.
Look, sometimes we do acquire artworks that speak against the establishment, but we should deliberate and agree that this work speaks to a generation, and it speaks to something that is happening within the contemporary context of South Africa. So we need to acquire that the artwork, because it engages with the contemporary issues. Unless an artwork is simply pro-Zuma or pro-Ramaphosa without any interrogation of the social issues, then we tend to push those out. Did I answer your question? Okay. And in relation to the medium that we select, Nondo alluded again to us being open to all kinds of mediums, but mentioned that the ArtBank isn't ready yet in collecting and in leasing out video works or multimedia works. And this is not the only constraint that we look at. Imagine an artist submitting an ice sculpture that would require certain conditions in keeping it, but also when we list that artwork, it would require those conditions in offices and in public spaces, which some might not be able to provide. And then suddenly we have a puddle of water instead of that ice sculpture. So we do consider some of the mediums that are submitted. And this is considered in relation again to the mission and vision, where the ArtBank wants to archive, but also to promote artworks for artists. And then the price issue came up last year because of the decision to cap the artworks. Came up last year because there was an artist that submitted an artwork that we really wanted in the collection. But the issue was, if we do acquire this artwork, then a number of artists that have submitted equally important works or critical works for the collection will suddenly be, we can't afford because of this one artwork. So we look at our budget and then consider how many artworks we need. And last year we came up with the cap. It's not based or it's not fixed in stone that that is the way we're gonna go forward. Remember, in the beginning I said we are a flexible committee that works with what we have, first in terms of the budget, but also looks at the submissions that are submitted to us. Imagine if we have a budget of 1 million, for instance, and suddenly we don't get as many submissions. We will be able to look at artworks that would be more than the 60,000 rand cap, because we still have a budget. But if we have a budget of 1 million rands and we have submissions of more than 500, and most of those are equally important for the acquisitions, then we will be able to split the money or the budget accordingly. Any questions so far? Yes.
I'd like to know, for emerging artists or for someone who just started, do you have any mentoring program where the emerging artist can go to the person outside of the committee, where the work can be critiqued and maybe that person says to you, okay, you can add this, okay, you can improve or whatever, and also guide you in pricing. Do you have any of that?
Okay. Are you gonna?
Yeah. Okay, great. Now we're having questions. So it's been a standard practice for the ArtBank to not, we only communicate with the successful artists. So that is our standard process, that we communicate with the successful artists and say, hey, the committee has accepted your work. But then through a different program that we did, we realized that artists do need a feedback session of sorts. And I'll speak to that in the second half of the presentation. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm away from the mic, I'm sorry. So yeah, so then in 2020, there's a program that we did, and that helped us find a way of providing feedback to artists. And that's why I'm saying I'll speak to that when we've done this Q&A. But then we're also consistently looking for other ways of being able to provide feedback to the artists, because we also don't want the ArtBank to be dictators of the sector. We don't want that only the ArtBank standard is the standard for the sector. So we look for other ways of providing feedback to artists. So for example, in the Free State, we've partnered with the New Breed Art Competition. And within that program, there is a feedback session, but obviously would be specific to the Free State artists. But we're always looking for other engagements in other provinces, so we are able to engage artists directly in that way. So we're always looking for programs, and I'll speak to the one that we're currently working on. But we do try to separate the submission program process and the feedback mentorship program. Because this is specifically speaking to, if you remember, I said we have 4 mission statements. The first one is curating the collection. So the funding window is linked to that. And then the feedback, mentorship speaks to the third mission statement, which is the nurturing of the artist. So we try to keep programs sort of separate so that we don't confuse artists and the sector. Yeah.
Once again, successful artists, what do you mean by that? Do we have a person who has been an artist who has been practicing for a long time?
Successful artists are artists that the committee has said we can buy their work. Yeah.
So just to be clear, on the 60,000 margin that you put across, are you saying that an artist who has a work, who wants to sell a work that is beyond the 60,000 can still submit? You will consider that according to, with regards to the budget? Is that what you're saying?
Okay.
At the moment, the 60,000 is the cap, but depending on the budget, but also on the number of submissions that we get in that particular year, the quality of the work, the trajectory of the artist, and everything else. But for your information, the 60,000 currently is the cap. So you might not submit an artwork unless the ArtBank on its call states that artworks that are beyond the 60,000 mark will be considered, or we are open to that at that stage. But currently, the 60,000 is the cap.
So just to also add there, just trend on trend, each year, the submissions increase by about 40%. So so you can imagine we jump from 280 submissions to the next year 350 submissions to the next year 400 or 500 submissions. So it's a lot of work to look at, because you can imagine it's 350 times 5 of artworks we look at, and we only end up buying just over 100. So that's why it became important that the cap was put in, so that we can look at that. Yes.
I don't know if I did it already. The young up-and-coming, fresh new artists, do you take their works on?
Yeah, we look at everyone. So we don't. You will see the selection. The guidelines does not speak to you have to have a degree or you have to have formal training. We don't speak to any of that. We look at all artists. In fact, we've had artists who have no formal qualifications. Maybe they've been to an art center here and there, or some of them have just, the one artist, he went, in his artist bio, he's taught himself by going to the library and looking at art books. But we end up buying his work because his work is of good quality. So we don't restrict artists. We look at the merit of the work. And interesting enough, some of those artists who were bought by the ArtBank for the first time have gone on to have really good careers. Like they're really doing things in the sector.
And just to add, the mission of the ArtBank is also to develop young and upcoming artists. That's one of the main characteristics of the ArtBank. So upcoming and emerging and young, self-taught are all considered. So all artists, whether you are an established artist or young and emerging, we will consider your work based on the criteria, of course. Imagine if someone like William Kenrich submits a work. His work now starts from 500,000 upwards. So the only criteria that would stop him from submitting at the ArtBank is the capped, is the 60,000, unless he makes a new work that he considers to be 60,000 or less. But also what we should be aware of, or what artists, young and emerging artists should be aware of, is overpricing. When you are an emerging artist and the first artwork that you submit to the ArtBank is 60,000 or more, and we have no historic background of the young artist or emerging artist or of the artist, and there's no trajectory, there is no historic background of the artist's trajectory, then your artwork could be eliminated just because of the pricing. Hence, we, or the ArtBank, does give feedback around the pricing and other criteria that they've set up.
Is 24th of June the only submission date for?
No, you can submit now until the 24th of June. So we've already received submissions already, but the deadline is 24th June. So it can't be after.
What about the rest of the year up until December?
We do one call per year.
Okay.
Yeah, so every year we do a call around this time of the year. So between May and July, we generally do a call, but it's in annually. So if you miss it this year, you can submit next year.
One last question. My question was based on, do you take works from artists who are still in, I'll say artists, artists who are still in high school,
No.
and they're good?
So it has to be 18 or older.
Let's say they're 18, but they're
Yeah.
still in high school.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, 18 or older.
as long as they have an ID. There was a question from that side. Yes, sir.
Hi. I want to challenge well, not challenge, but question that date, that window that we are, the works were from the previous year, October 21 and ongoing. So that's how many months? It's a year. It's less than a year, right? Some artists, for example, that work there on the wire, that wire work there by Walter Hoffman, it doesn't take a year or so to make it. So my works take sometimes 2 years.
Oh,
and
then
many other artists.
no, then that's fine. We actually do have works that have dates, multiple year dates. For example, this artist here, Moramaga, at the bottom, the works that we have in the collection span 4 years. So, but the last work was like in 2017 and the work was bought in 2018. So, that's why the October 2021 is to illustrate that we want the freshest work, like the newest work. But we do consider other works that we think we can put in.
Can I also
Yeah.
respond? I think an artwork's date is when the artist consider the artwork finished, not when he started. It's the date when you finished that artwork. So if you started it before the 21st of October in whatever, and you finish it this year, the artwork was made this year, was finished this year. So we will consider artworks that were started in 1990, but that were finished this year.
Okay, I think that's, one more question.
Okay.
I'm particularly interested in your leasing model. Because obviously the more people you can lease,
Yes, yes.
then the greater amount of money you have available. Could you perhaps talk to us about how that leasing model is structured? Who you're leasing to, maybe some values, so we can get an idea of your clients.
So at the moment, so the first clients have, so we've received a couple of, okay, for example, we just received work back from the Dubai Expo. So we had sent works for the Department of DTI, Trade and Industry. So they were in charge of the pavilion in the expo. So there were works in that expo, but then we also have works with private clients. That's been the main clients at the moment. People are wanting works for their homes, and the idea is that we lease the works out at the fraction of the value of the work. So the client would not lease the work obviously for the value, but it would be for a fraction of the value over 2 years. And then after 2 years, we review the contract. Either they can return the works, they can consider to buy the works, but usually we have a minimum of 2 years. And yeah, so that's generally the idea of it. In terms of, it's difficult to say in terms of values because the clients so far have just been going on if they like the work or not, and not on price point. So yeah, it's difficult to say. That's why in the phase that we're going into now, we're interested to see what the trend becomes there, because really it's just been about, I like this work, I want this work. Yeah.
You got a mind to follow up on that. So then how do your potential clients find you?
There's the website. Yeah, so we've got the website, the ArtBankSA.org, where you can see all the works there. A lot of them have been, the first client tells his friends, and then it just becomes a network of people wanting works. But the main way is the website. We receive lots of requests through the website.
So on your website, you can see whose work has been leased. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
See what is successful.
Yeah. So we're still in the process of updating it, but that's a dangerous question. That's a dangerous question, because then you will fall into the rabbit hole of doing work that you think others. Yeah, and it's not necessarily that way. It just may be particular people liking particular things. It's not. It's yeah. It's. I would avoid that. Do your work.
Why don't you do things that somebody will buy?
No. The great thing is, so what we've seen with the exhibitions that we do across the country is that there's great interest in the art that is in the collection. Like everywhere we go, audiences are very impressed with the work that's in the collection. So if you get into the collection will find the client. Yeah. Don't stress too much about what's working and what's not working. Just do your work. Yeah.
Are you using, to collect the work, are you using a specific courier company that is guaranteed to?
Yeah. Because the ArtBank, so what I didn't explain, because it might confuse things, is that the ArtBank is a program of DSAC, right? So the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. But because of advocacy around the 2014, 2015, the sector was not interested in DSAC creating new entities, new institutions that have huge costs in running, and then end up with not enough funds going to the artist. So the solution that the department came with was, okay, let's create the program, but then that's put it within an entity that already exists. So that entity is, they looked at other entities, but the entity that ended up with the program is the National Museum in Bloemfontein. So we work within the structure of the National Museum. So they provide the support in administration, like in finance and bookkeeping. So then we have to follow the government processes on procuring services, which is why, we require artists to be on the CSD. Because that's one of the requirements of the government to do business with the government. So through the processes, we are able then to identify the best suppliers to transport the work, to frame the work, to conserve the work. So we are able to cover that as a team. And because we come from the art sector, and in previous lives we used to be artists, we value and we appreciate the importance and the care that goes into the art.
Yeah, I was asking because in the templates that you've been showing, there is no stipulation.
No, so that's
in terms of work damage, who takes.
So we buy the artwork. So as soon as we buy the artwork is ours. We insure it, we transport it, we handle that. Yeah. So the idea is to make the barrier for entry for artists as low as possible.
It would be lovely if you would have that printed there.
Yeah. No, that's why it's in the guidelines to say do not worry. So the idea is that we communicate with the successful artist. So we will tell the successful artist, just take your work, for example, in the Eastern Cape, just take your work to the museum and we will handle it from here. So as long as you deliver it to the museum, we take it from there. Or in other provinces, it's an art center. In other provinces, so we will tell you, this is the venue to go drop off your artwork, and then we'll take it from there. Yeah.
Okay. I think the question there is also informed by the previous art competitions, whereby the artist would submit the actual artworks. And when they come back, they get back with damages and all that. So we only look, as much as it is a constraint, the fact that we look at digital images, because we make our decisions as the committee looking at digital images. And then we acquire the work. And the work comes to the ArtBank, having been bought from the artist, and all responsibility then lies with the ArtBank.
Okay. So then, what I want to speak to then is around the nurture question and the mentorship question that we were asked. So in 2020, we know it was COVID lockdowns, and the sector was basically shut down. So at the time, the president then made a call to create employment opportunities across all sectors in the country. So the arts were also required to do this, and the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture ran a program through the ArtBank, which was called Banking with Art, Connecting Lives. And under this program, we ran 2 programs that supported artists for 4 months, giving them a stipend for 4 months. So the first program was the commissioning program, where we supported 95 artists and 10 regional coordinators for 4 months to create work. And then the work was then going to be considered for the ArtBank collection. So there were quite a few benefits in this program, because you can imagine, I think it was over November 2020 and February 2021, a lot of artists were not getting any income in. So that was able to sustain a few artists. And then out of that process, of the work that were created, 70 artworks were included into the ArtBank collection. So in the previous slides, I also included some of the PSP works. Let me see, for example, this Tulumango Feni work, this Naval Sayakamela, and this Buhle Galashe were all part of were all created under the PSP program. And then we also did a program which was a placement program where organizations across the country could have interns, or artists could have interns working with them, and we also supported those interns for 4 months. So what we learned from the commissioning program specifically is that because the artists had to provide reports while they were making the works, we were able to give them feedback as they created. And then we also had feedback sessions with the artists who were struggling, and had chats with them discussing anything from the conceptual themes to the art making, to maybe challenges that they're experiencing. And we found that very helpful to artists. And they gained quite a lot of benefit in that their work was able to grow and impress us in the end. So this year, we're also looking at doing this program again. We're in talks with the department about running an expanded version of this program. So I wanted to also bring this up so that you're also aware of it. This program would only happen though after the funding window, the 2022 funding window has closed on the 24th of June. So the idea is that you just keep your eye out on our website, our social media, when we do make a call for this, because the idea is that once again, over 4 months, artists would also be supported to create work that would then be considered by the ArtBank. Okay. And then, we have a question.
Thank you, my question, as I see that ArtBank is only considering the visual artist. My question is that what about the crafters works?
So it depends on what kind of craft we are talking about.
Like the beads, jewelries.
Yeah. So the ArtBank. Okay. I don't have it here. There's an artist named Morgan Mahape. So we acquired his work. I think it was 2019. He creates portraits and images using beads. So that's why it's not easy to say, no, not beading, because it's also a medium. But the guide is that the question becomes, is it contemporary art though? You know, would it fit under that bracket? I think that's what a crafter or a visual person working with craft mediums would have to ask themselves, because we wouldn't necessarily buy earrings, but what can you create using the same thinking of creating earrings, but create an art piece with that technique or with that thinking? I think that we also have a work. I can't remember the artist, but that's actually embroidery. So they created works, but have embroidered. Maybe Songezile.
But also in consideration of crafters, we should look at the fact that each genre.
I'm gonna leave the mic.
Okay. We should look at the fact that each genre has its own platforms. Like with the crafts have got a separate kind of entities that do almost the same thing for crafters. Likewise in visual arts, in theater, and in other forms of art. So there are boundaries in which all these genres kind of engage and interact, and we do consider, as Kwanonto said, artworks that border or that sit in those borderlines. So you need to answer the question whether the artwork or the product that you are making falls into crafts, and then it should go to those kind of entities that support crafts, or it falls under visual arts, or it borders between, and then we can consider it. Okay.
Yes?
Yeah, I have a question to since you said the artworks that will be collected should be original. Now the original work that have been selected for the collection, do the artist still own rights or royalties to the artwork? And are we allowed to make or sell copies of or the prints of the artwork, say someone outside wants to
So the artist keeps the copyright of the artwork, right? So we require the permissions, obviously, to, as I said, to publish and publications and advertise the artwork. But if we are commissioning the works, then there would be more restrictions as to what you can do with the image of that work. But also it's important to appraise yourself with, organizations like Delro or Vanza to understand what are industry practices with how you use your work, because then that can affect the future trajectory of your career, because then if you don't follow the industry standards, future collectors may also be hesitant on engaging with you, because then they're not sure what you would do with the works. So I think what we would want to do at some point, because we're looking at doing a series of workshops, I think that's one of the workshops that we will be looking at doing in educating artists around how you can use imagery of your work and how it sits in various collections. So yeah, I think that's maybe something we'll add to the list of the workshops. Okay, I think that was the last question. So thank you very much for Emma for having us here. It was great engaging with you artists in the Eastern Cape. I'm looking forward to seeing works from you by the 24th of June. And thank you very much.
Just mine to say to close out today, I'm really very excited about the turnout. And I'm going to be on the sidelines now and watch it. So I'm really hoping that I can say watch this space, because it is a huge desire of the ArtBank to make sure that all of the different regions of South Africa are represented. And they have said that perhaps in sort of more rural areas like Nelson Mandela Bay, it's important that we get our voices out there. So please, I'm very excited. Everybody submit, spread the word, and I'll be on the sidelines watching the final selection. So I'm very excited. So thank you so much for coming today and sharing, and we look forward. We're hoping in the future, we can't say yet, but we're hoping at some stage that maybe we can have one of the ArtBank's collections displayed here, and we're hoping that when it's displayed here, that there are a lot of faces who are familiar with it. So, right, thank you everyone.